What if Satoru Gojo had escaped the prison realm, but in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen module 68 years in the future? What if, when he finally got out, decades had passed, the world had completely changed, and Yuji Itadori was no longer that 5-year-old kid he once knew, but the strongest being that ever existed in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe? That's exactly what we're diving into today. And there's one thing Yuji would do in this confrontation that would change the fate of this universe forever, but we'll get to that. My name is Shoyo, and today we're theorizing what would happen if Satoru Gojo finally woke up in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen module, nearly 7 decades after being sealed, and ended up facing the guy who was once his own student, Yuji Itadori. But before we jump into this journey through the future of Jujutsu Kaisen module, go ahead and subscribe and drop a like, because it really helps the channel keep bringing theories and stories like this one. To understand this scenario, you first need to know what happened to the prison realm. In the original Jujutsu Kaisen manga, Satoru Gojo was freed thanks to Angel. But in this timeline, that never happens, because Ryam and Sukuna would kill Hanakurusu before she could break the seal. And without her, Gojo would be trapped forever. So with Gojo locked away, what would happen to the rest of the world? Kenjaku, that guy who spent centuries hopping from body to body to orchestrate the culling game, would end up getting taken out by Takaba and Yuta before he could finish his plan. Without him coordinating everything, the culling game would fall apart. But Sukuna, he wouldn't be defeated. He'd finish taking over Megumi's body and destroy whatever resistance was still standing. The problem is, with no Gojo and no sorcerer even close to his level, Sukuna simply wouldn't have anyone left to fight. And Sukuna without an opponent, that's no fun for him. He doesn't destroy the world for kicks. He wants the hunt. He wants that feeling of being pushed to his absolute limit. Without that, there'd be no reason to stay awake. So he'd make a binding vow with himself and go into hibernation, waiting for time to bring him someone worthy. A bomb on pause out of boredom. With Gojo gone and Sukuna sleeping, the world would enter a long era of rebuilding. And decades later, the Samurians would arrive. They always arrive. It's what the module universe establishes. It's part of the cycle of the Jujutsu Kaisen world. The cube containing Gojo would be buried under the rubble of a destroyed Tokyo, completely forgotten. Inside the cube, time doesn't pass for Gojo. He doesn't age physically. Gege Akutami himself explained this in an interview, saying that if Gojo thought too much in there, he'd lose his mind. So he'd do everything he could to keep his head empty. But that worked for 19 days, not for 68 years. The mind keeps going, and that's the problem. 68 years would pass outside, but inside, time might feel completely different. Centuries could have gone by. And throughout all of that, Gojo's mind would most likely slowly deteriorate until he fell into complete confusion about reality, to the point where even someone as sharp as Gojo wouldn't know anymore whether he was trapped or free, whether the world still existed, or whether any of it was even real. And what would that madness do to Gojo's infinity the moment he got out? We'll get to that in a second. In 2086, the Samurian energy that had been spreading through Japanese soil for decades would cause a resonance with Tengen's already weakened seal. The mechanism would fail. The cube would open. And Satoru Gojo would step out into the world for the first time in 68 years. Except the Gojo who came out wouldn't be the same one who went in. He'd be cold, distant, almost unrecognizable. The six eyes would still work perfectly, scanning everything around him with total precision, but there'd be no warmth behind them anymore. The smile would still be on his face, but now it'd be completely hollow, the smile of someone who learned to imitate feeling, not actually feel it. And here comes the first big question. Would the infinity of a mentally broken Gojo work differently than normal? Hold on, we'll get there. After sensing the energy signature of the cube opening, Yuji Itadori would show up in seconds, because Yuji would still be alive. In fact, he'd be one of the only ones from the old guard still around. The residual fusion with Sukuna had completely stopped his aging, so he'd have over 80 years of experience packed into the body of a young adult, with every scar and every battle of the past decades carved into the way he moved. And this wouldn't be the same Yuji who cried over Junpei's death. This would be the man who watched everyone die of old age while he stayed the same. The two would face each other for the first time. Yuji would speak in a tired voice, carrying the weight of decades, and say that Sensei was late. Gojo would smile, but the smile wouldn't reach his eyes. The six eyes would scan Yuji like he was an unknown threat. The broken mind would process the information, but wouldn't fully recognize who was standing in front of him. Gojo would respond, mechanically acknowledging the name, saying he'd grown, but with zero warmth behind it. Yuji would immediately realize something was seriously wrong. Same white hair, same infinity, pulsing around his body, but his eyes would be empty in a way Gojo never was. And before Yuji could say another word, Gojo would fire off red. The gravitational repulsion punch that would destroy any special grade sorcerer would be stopped with a simple fist movement by Yuji. For the first time in decades, something inside Gojo's broken mind would register genuine surprise.